Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive right into a super fascinating theological framework by Dr. Robert A. Peterson to understand exactly how a biblical worldview says God communicates with humanity. It's a real deep dive into the mechanics of divine disclosure, the human condition, and, well, how people actually respond to it. Here's our agenda for today. We'll be covering defining divine revelation, the human dilemma, general versus special revelation, creation's universal message, and finally, suppressing the truth.
Section 1. Defining divine revelation, unveiling the hidden.
The etymology here is actually really fascinating. When we say revelation in English, it doesn't just mean sharing some random fact. It actually comes from the Latin word revelatio, which literally means to unveil or to lay bare. And that translates the Greek word apocalypsis, which points specifically to this supernatural uncovering of truths about God and His plan. Truths that would honestly just remain completely hidden from human perception otherwise. So it's this very intentional pulling back of the curtain by the Creator.
Section 2. The human dilemma, the need for disclosure.
So why is there an absolute need for this disclosure in the first place? Well, it stems from a pretty profound gap. As humans, we're inherently finite and, well, blinded by sin. We have a definitive beginning and distinct limits. God, on the flip side, is infinite. He's unlimited in His perfections with no beginning and no end, and He is deeply holy. Because of this massive, honestly unbridgeable disparity between infinite holiness and our finite limitations, there's just no way we could ever bridge that gap to know Him on our own initiative. Basically, God has to make the first move.
Section 3. General versus special revelation, two channels of truth.
Drawing on Millard Erickson's systematic theology, Dr. Peterson breaks this communication down into two distinct channels. First up, general revelation. Think of this as being beamed to absolutely everyone, everywhere, at all times. Now, it's non-redemptive, but it does provide enough knowledge of God to make all of humanity accountable. Special revelation, on the other hand, is highly targeted. It's given to particular people at specific times and places. Think of the biblical prophets or the incarnation of Jesus. This kind of revelation is inherently redemptive. It offers a clear, specific path to a saving relationship with God.
Section 4. Creation's universal message. Psalm 19.
Just think about the profound metaphor used in this famous ancient poetry. The sky and the stars. They don't literally speak with audible voices, right? But they actively declare and proclaim. It's like they act as this continuous, ambient broadcast, just constantly showcasing the Creator's beauty, His majesty, and His sheer existence to absolutely anyone who simply bothers to look up. It's as if every single atom is out there echoing, "God made me."
And this builds right into four specific traits of general revelation. First, it's continuous, literally pouring out speech day and night. Second, it's universal, reaching out to the very ends of the earth. Third, it's totally accessible and even joyful. The text personifies it as a radiant bridegroom leaving his chamber, or a strong man running a race. And finally, it's inescapable. Just like absolutely nothing on earth can hide from the physical heat of the sun, no human being is entirely hidden from this ambient, structural revelation of a creator.
To really ground this in reality, let's look at the experience of the famous author C.S. Lewis. After his conversion, Lewis famously shifted away from viewing nature as this vague, kind of pantheistic blob where God is simply everything. Instead, he started marveling at it as the deliberate, intelligent handiwork of a distinct creator. He found this totally new joy in just swimming and experiencing nature. And there's also this incredibly powerful true story of a despairing apologist who went out to a hillside actually intending to end his life. But upon genuinely observing the profound order and beauty of the grass, the trees, and the sky, he realized there absolutely had to be a master artificer. That profound realization literally saved his life.
Section 5. Suppressing the truth. Romans 1.
Now, I want you to imagine a fascinating modern metaphor to kind of help explain the theology of the Apostle Paul here. Imagine that God's attributes, His eternal power, His divine nature, they're just constantly broadcasting everywhere on what we might call radio station God. The broadcast itself, it is perfectly clear. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the transmission. But because of the human condition of sin, our internal receivers are jammed. Our radios are essentially broken, which causes us to actively distort and suppress that incredibly clear incoming signal.
Paul maps out this tragic paradox as a very logical downward spiral. It starts with step 1. The truth of God's power is clearly revealed in creation. But then we hit step 2. Humans inexcusably suppress this truth. And that suppression leads directly right into step 3, where human thinking becomes completely futile and hearts just go dark. Finally, the whole thing culminates in step 4, idolatry. So instead of worshiping the Creator they clearly see the evidence for, humanity just exchanges the truth for a lie. They start worshiping the creation itself, whether that's nature, handmade images, or, honestly, even themselves.
The truly crucial point here is just how deep this suppression actually goes. The Apostle Paul directly links religious sins, like idolatry, with severe bodily and sexual sins. Now, why is that? It's because both of these areas corrupt our fundamental identities. According to this framework, we are created as gendered, worshipping image bearers who are literally designed for a relationship with our Maker. So distorting the truth of the Creator doesn't just result in some bad theology, it fractures the very core of who we are and how we view our own bodies and relationships.
Ultimately, this whole structured theological framework leaves us pondering a deeply provocative paradox about our own daily perception. It really forces us to look inward and ask, if the universe around you is indeed constantly broadcasting a deliberate message of majesty and order, well, how clear is your receiver? Are you actually hearing the signal, or is all the static just getting in the way? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.